Now time to talk about the D3 National Championship. We had a Stagg Bowl rematch, North Central taking on Mount Union. The Cardinals, Jimmy, third national championship in 5 years down in Houston, Texas, my man. What a game.
Yeah, the run they've been on has been absolutely incredible. Being that 3 of the last 5, that's just can't do a lot better than that. They've been to the national championship now 5 years in a row as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just the epitome of consistency across all college football at this point. 41-25, and our boy Luke Lehnen absolutely cooked. 18 for 26, 298, 4 passing touchdowns, while also running for 55 and another on the ground. So, the kid is just an absolute beast. There's not much more you can say. The kid is unbelievable.
100%. We'll talk our fair share about Luke here very soon, but I want to touch on the stadium down there in Houston because it's not one that we've seen here. And down in Houston, it's the Shell Energy Stadium. It's home to a couple different teams, but D3 football very much not being the primary sport played down there in Shell Stadium. The primary being the Houston Dynamo and the Houston Dash. That's soccer, professionally, men's and women's respectively. Those two teams. You've got Texas Southern Athletics and their football program that play out of this. I believe it was the first soccer-centric or soccer-focused stadium to be built in a downtown kind of metropolitan area, something of the sort. So that's kind of a neat deal. The more important part, though, 22,000 seats. This thing was opened in 2012, and in today's money, you're talking like $130 million. So they had some cool pictures here of the paint job getting done there on the field, and there's a great photo, a great shot from the Harris County, Houston there of the Stagg Bowl logo right there at midfield, and obviously neither of us were there. This looked like a pretty sweet venue, right? When you're watching this, and to give you kind of the viewers a better perspective of what this typically looks like on any given game day, especially when it comes to the pitch out there and these soccer teams that compete in this stadium, look at that atmosphere.
That's sweet.
That's pretty awesome, man. I love it. I love the design of it. I think it's a really, really cool spot. And so that's kind of an exciting piece of this one. But again, go back to this game, man. And we talk about Luke Lehnen, who we'll talk about more than enough in this episode. He had himself a fantastic performance. North Central absolutely doing their thing on both sides of the ball. It didn't exactly start that way, though, right? You talk about them on that kind of miscommunication or just kind of a mishap. They fumble the ball. Mount Union picks it up, drives down the field. Echeverry goes in and scores, and you're like, oh shit, we might have ourselves a game. That was, for North Central, the first and only deficit they have faced throughout the entire duration of the season. That's pretty ridiculous right there. Talk about that start.
Yeah, that's absurd. Actually, it was funny because I was going through Twitter as I was going. There's a lot of Mount Union fans that were pretty chatty after that first score and like how everything transpired early. And They were silenced pretty quickly. I don't know if you saw that or not, but
I hear you.
Yeah, no, that was something else.
And I'm sure, they had reason to be, right? You get up on top of a team like that just hasn't faced that kind of adversity literally throughout the entire course of the season. You're going to be pretty excited about that one. Now, Luke Lehnen and company, they drive down and score, and from there on out, their offense was just methodical, right? The way that they were able to move the ball at their own pace, especially going to the second half, all 4 of their possessions in the second half end up going for touchdowns into the red zone, and they just were doing things at a very high clip. Now, you talk about Lehnen, his impact and his legacy that he leaves behind here at North Central. We're going to talk about potentially one of the best to ever do it at the Division III level when you look at his resume. Most total touchdowns in NCAA history, that is regardless of any division. The most consecutive games with a passing touchdown. He's a 2-time Gallardi Trophy winner, the D3 Heisman, for those of you who live under a literal rock. And he's now got 2 national championships under his belt. His all-time record, Jimmy, is 57-2 as a starting quarterback for the Cardinals. That is unheard of.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I'm just sitting there. I'm like, wow, all of this, man? Like, holy cow. Like, this, yeah, you can't really top that.
No, it's incredible. And the coolest part about that and talking with him and having him on the show and those kind of things is he has all those individual accolades and individual awards. But when you ask him about his success and the things that he is, in fact, most proud of, and so it's at these moments, too, where you're at the top of the mountain, I think his answers are really neat in the way that he answers those questions. I'm going to cut to a little video from our friends here at D3 Football Huddle. They had the chance to interview Luke after the game, so I wanted to hear just a couple of their comments with him after the game, post-game. Here you got Frank Rossi and James Baker.
Leading player, let's look at it. 2 Gallardi trophies, 2 Stagg Bowls. what's the most impressive, important thing for you ultimately in this whole wild career you've had for North Central?
I really just think it's the relationships I've been able to build over the past 4 or 5 years, and then getting to come out here with my fifth-year guys, the guys I started with, the 12, 15, whatever number it is, and end on a big win against a really good team, and just really looking forward to enjoying this moment with my fifth-year guys one last time.
The relationships, right? That's what's most important to him. That's what he's most proud of at this moment. Again, on top of the mountain, there are so many things that you can say in that moment, and he's most proud of the relationships that he has with these guys. A class from North Central that from freshman year to senior year, whether you're redshirted or not, all you have known is at least playing in the national championship game.
Yeah. It's become an expectation over there. It really has.
It absolutely has. You talked about his stat line, 18 to 26, 298, running it too. You saw his rushing touchdown was a thing of beauty as well. He's one of those guys that, sneaky athletic. We'll throw that one in there for sure.
Sneaky.
But the way that he gets around, a lot of the things he does appear on the outside to be like low effort. It's the way that he handles himself, the way that he is so calm, cool, and collected. There's no stress seemingly in his game, right? There's no panic decision making. He's very calculated behind under center there for this Cardinals attack, and we saw that in this one, I think. And when you look at some of the stats in this one, I think one of the biggest takeaways, and shout out to Logan Hansen for this one that I saw on Twitter just today when I was scrolling. I talked about that early deficit. North Central has not been in that position very much this year. Look at this stat, Jimmy. How about North Central? That was their closest win of the season. The margin of victory was 16. No other team in the history of Division III football since 1973 has won every game by at least 16 points. The previous best was 2015 Mount Union, who won every game by at least 14.
Wildly impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, that's absurd.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. First of all, shout out Logan for compiling this, because who the hell has the passion to go and like really find these statistics and this data at this level? He does. He's probably one of the only humans on earth that will go out there and do that. So much respect and kudos to him, because we're so used to like the Amazon Prime, the next gen stats and all this and that, and these computers and models. I guarantee this is just him going back and just finding these kind of things.
Yeah,
He's got these algorithms and these models built up. It's very, very respectable. But looking at a breakdown of this game, Jimmy, another great graphic here from D3 Sports Data I wanted to take a look at, compares the team stats and some of those individual stat lines from this one down in Houston. And to cap off the 15-0 season for the Cardinals here, you see it wasn't necessarily as one-sided when it came to the statistics, when it came to the box score. There was a lot of times here for Mount Union that they were very much in this game. I think I go back to this game is 7-7 in the second quarter. They're driving down. DeShields has an opportunity to pass and throw a touchdown on fourth down from, I think it was like inside the red zone for sure, maybe around the 10-yard line. And it looked like he just overthrew his receiver and just didn't have maybe the best ball there. And who knows? There's so many things that could go into that, but that was a critical key moment for this Mount Union team. North Central, that was one of 2 times their defense would step up on fourth down and get the ball back for that offense. And I think that's reflected here. North Central had a much better rushing attack in the second half, but Mount Union, they were not that far off. And the spread of this one, you can talk about this a little bit more. North Central was very heavily favored here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, they covered the spread, which was something that I would have if we were done like a pregame show. I was going to pick them to cover for sure. But I mean, wow. I mean, you still got to say. I mean, actually, they're having absolutely wild season for those guys. Great game in this one as well. You got to just tip the cap all across the board of Mount Union for fighting. But man, oh man, North Central still coming out on top by 16.
No, absolutely. And you look at this one too, North Central, 2 of 2 on fourth down on the night. I mentioned earlier, fourth down, 1 of 3 for Mount Union. That pass in the second quarter was a big one. I feel like a pivotal point in this game. And you look at what they were able to do in the red zone. North Central, 4 of 4 on those trips. And you'll notice they scored all those points. They only had 4 trips to the red zone. Jimmy, what does that mean?
What do you think it means, Kobe?
That means there were some big explosive chunk plays for this North Central offense, and I think that's a number that doesn't necessarily show up in the stat book, but sometimes, or the box score, excuse me.
Yeah.
Sometimes the numbers that aren't there are even more telling. North Central was able to, really chunk this offensive attack, and that defense stepped up in a lot of ways. We saw it in the second half of last year's Stagg Bowl against Cortland. Their defense holding Mount Union to 1 of 4 in the red zone scoring chances there. That feels like a really pivotal moment and kind of a pivotal statistic for this North Central team.
Yeah, very much so, man. Anytime you can hold the team, the bend don't break philosophy is, as they say, it's big time stuff right there.
Absolutely. You talk about Echeverry, who we've spoken highly of, obviously, throughout this playoff run, for good reason. He finishes the year with over 1,700 rushing yards, 35 total touchdowns on the year, 40 receptions, literally Mr. Do-It-All for this Purple Raider attack. And he's a really talented back, and was very excited to see him show up on the big stage. I don't think we were expecting anything less, but nonetheless, he's a fun player to watch, dude.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah.
Man. But, sure. I mean, with all that said and done, man, we've got the champions. I got a little bit of a video from, and we can't play much of the actual highlights because we'll get demonetized. That's the ESPN thing. But I got a little bit of the video here. We can at least see the moment from North Central here. And you're going to hear it before you see it. Here's a little bit of the moment, North Central, the Cardinals getting the trophy post-game here, and it was very obviously knew what they were doing after the game. They knew exactly where to go for the trophy, like they had almost been there before, dude.
Yeah, almost like they've been there before, right?
But, yeah, now you're talking about, again, we talked earlier about the legacy that Luke Lehnen has left behind in this program and being one of the best to ever do it in Division III football and setting records across the NCAA regardless of division. Then the conversation shifts to this North Central team. And we talked about Ferris winning 3 of the last 4 national championships at the Division II level. And can we start using that word dynasty? When does that term dynasty start to get thrown around? 2 of the last 5. I don't know if that necessarily is a term that they've earned just yet, but I think they're certainly on the precipice with the success that they've had. Obviously, if you ask anyone in that locker room, though, the key is finishing on the biggest stage. They've won 2 of the last 5. That just means that they haven't won 3 of the last 5, and that's something that talk about being uber critical and like you talk about this team right now, but I don't know if they're quite to that stage yet. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to argue that they wouldn't, but at the same time, 3 out of 5 is probably like where you're looking for, kind of like North Central. So,
yeah, I hear you. But now the big question turns to next year, and already seen some like way too early top 25 type rankings.
Yeah.
I guarantee you there isn't a Cardinal over there that is worried about next year right now. Just a day removed from a national championship. They can give 2 shits about the fall and what that means heading into CCIW play next year, dude. But really exciting season, capped off by a solid game. My only big note is, like, I was peeking at this on my phone, but, like, what are we doing scheduling this the same time as, like, the Sunday night game, the last game of the NFL season?
Yeah, that was not a good call. Not a good call.
Just outrageous, dude. Because, like, I mean, being a big time Lions fan, like, I'm locked into this Lions game. Absolutely, I'm gonna watch. I got this game up, and I'm flipping back and forth. But, like, it just seems to be a really shoot in the foot type moment. Thankfully, like Minnesota, Detroit, like these teams aren't necessarily like Illinois and Ohio. Maybe don't have as much of a pull. Still talking about a lot of Midwest football there, but I just thought that was maybe not handled the best. Supposedly it was because they didn't want the teams to be traveling on New Year's Day, which is certainly understandable, but at some point, I think when you're talking about the product that is D3 football and all the D3 football games being on ESPN Plus this year along with Division II, I think that was actually really good. I think that was great in that I could pay for one subscription and watch all this football across the 2 different levels. But when you talk about putting your best product on the biggest stage in front of as many eyeballs as possible, because that's what these championships are setting out to do, right? With your best programs playing on the biggest stage for the big hardware. You talk about teams like Mount Union, like North Central. If you are going to introduce anyone to D3 football by chance and by accident, by going through the channels, this is the game that you want them to see. And now you're talking about being covered up by, I mean, let's face it, just a bigger football game in the eyes of most Americans.
Yeah, and you can't blame said Americans for watching the Sunday night game either. It's just like you just cannot put that game in that time slot. It's just unfortunate.
No, it hurts, dude. It hurts. Man. But No, nonetheless, man, I felt like a really fitting way to cap off this year, the season that North Central's put together. And you go back just a few weeks ago to that win over Susquehanna. I think that was the final piece of really convincing everyone that they were going to go ahead and take this game. And they went out and did that. And they had to actually overcome some adversity early on to do that. I think that says a lot about this North Central team. And now, what do you do moving forward? What do you do next? What does Coach Spencer and company do next year? How do you cement that kind of term of dynasty down there in Naperville? And how do you really continue this success? Because that's the hard part, right? And they've done it so far, so I have no doubt that they'll go and do it again. And we'll be talking about them at this point of the year. Whether or not they'll have a trophy again come January, that will be the interesting part, right?
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see until next year.
Absolutely, dude. Well, I think that's kind of the big cliff notes from me, dude. Anything else to add on this season? I think it's been incredible. We'll take a little bit of a hiatus from the pod, but definitely be around to do some off-season coverage and content, and stick with it.
Yeah.
Sound good, brother?
Yeah, man.
Awesome. Thank you, Jimmy.
Yeah, thank you, Cope.
Appreciate you, dude.